In 1860, somewhere in Kalenjin land, a special person was born. That person was Koitalel Arap Samoei. Now, Arap Samoei is my favorite prophet in Kenya. In fact, he's one of my most favorite persons in Kenyan history. And the reason is this. To me, he's the only real prophet in the history of Kenya. Now I know many of you will argue and say, we have TV prophets. But to me, a TV prophet is not a genuine prophet, because he can't tell you what will happen in the next 5 minutes, let alone tell you what's going to happen in the next 10 years. Now, Koitalel Arap Samoei is special because he predicted the invasion by the British. And the words that he used are really, really special. And what is really sad is the fact that he's mostly ignored by Kenyans. People don't think about him, definitely refuse to honor him, yet he's an actual prophet. But you see, the modern day African can never honor another African. Like we said, in slave society, of which Kenya is a slave society, you know that, right? And the hierarchy is very clear. The Mzungu on top, the Indian next to him, and then the Chinese, and then maybe the Arab, and then coming last is the African. So in a hierarchical slave society, the slaves never honor other slaves, because all honor is due to the masters. All glory, all sympathy, all empathy, all solidarity is expressed towards the master and the master only. So, given that is the psychological superstructure that exists in Kenya, that's the mind that exists in Kenya right now, Koitalel doesn't get honored. You see, if you go into different temples, you'll find statues. By temple, I mean any building used for worship. If you go to the different temples in Kenya, you'll find statues of Europeans, right? Getting worshipped by Africans, right? But you'll never see a statue of Koitalel, because he's not honored, is he? Most of the Africans in Kenya will not consider him to be a genuine prophet, because, as it were, religion is a tool of colonial expression, so that to the African, if you want to go to heaven, you must go through the Mzungu or the Arab. See, Africans don't have a heaven. It's the Mzungu who decides who becomes a prophet, who becomes a saint, isn't it? And on the other side, there's the Arab who's controlling that other route to heaven. And so that is really sad, because Koitalel Arap Samoei is a genuine and real prophet. And he does not get any honor because the Mzungu will not honor him. And the Africans will not honor anyone who the Mzungu does not honor. And I think that is a really messed up situation. Anyway, you guys may refuse to honor him, but I honor him. Why? Because he's a real prophet. He said something would come to pass, and sure enough, it came to pass. But that's not even the reason why. Really, that's not the reason why. For me, it goes much deeper than that. It's the words that he used, because he said this. He said that when you see a serpent snaking its way into the land, breathing fire and smoke, you have to fight. That's what he said. He said you have to fight. Fight the serpent. Wage war on it. Do not bow down to it. See, that's a real prophet right there. A TV prophet will never tell you to fight against the beast. He will tell you to bow down to the beast. Now, you may dismiss those words, or you may not know the impact of those words. But let me tell you, those words are very deep. The fact that he used the word serpent, for me, that makes him a real prophet. In fact, if there's any man that I would like to sit down and have a conversation with, it's him. Because I would like to ask him, how did you know to use the word serpent? Because serpent is a very loaded word. It is so loaded that it is not even taught in church. It's a very loaded word. How did he know to use the word serpent? Now, let's use some biblical background. You see how deep this thing goes. Now, whether you're a Christian or not, it's meaningless. Just listen to the story. Now, the Bible makes certain claims that are very astonishing. Now, it says in Genesis, Moses says in Genesis, that people were on the earth minding their own business. And then one day, they encounter a being, a strange being that looks like a serpent, but talks like a man. And that being leads them into making a mistake. Now, we do not want to focus on that. We want to focus on the fact that Moses is also saying that it was a being that looked like a serpent. And now he continues to say something very interesting. He says that after the people made the mistake, they were cursed by God. And the curse was very interesting. It said that there'll be enmity between the children of the woman and the children of the serpent. That is interesting, isn't it? Because it raises the question, who are the children of the woman and who are the children of the serpent? Now, fast forward a couple of thousand years later, Jesus is talking about, gives a parable about the wheat and the weeds. And he says that one day there was a farmer who had a farm, and he planted seed on his farm, and then he left. And then after a while, an enemy showed up and planted his seed on the same farm. And when the servants of the farmer saw, they went and reported to the farmer and said, look, an enemy has planted his own seed onto your farm. Do you want us to uproot it? And the farmer said, no, let them both grow together until the time of the end, and then we'll separate them. Isn't that interesting? Because that is the exact same story that Moses is talking about in Genesis, right? That there are two seeds on the planet, the descendants of the woman and the descendants of the serpent. Now, who are the descendants of the serpent? Now, fast forward to Koitalel. Koitalel shows up and says, look, the day you will see a serpent snaking its way through the land, breathing fire and smoke, you fight. You fight. Whatever will come out of that serpent, you fight it to the finish. That's what he said. Which goes back to this same narrative of the serpent and its children that will come to mislead the entire earth and lead it into the pit. See, these are very deep things. Let me tell you even how much more deeper it goes. Now, when you look at, now we're talking about really ancient history, okay? Ancient history. Now, there was a religion in prehistory, okay? Before the flood. There was a flood. That we can prove. Before the flood, there was a religion. And the religion was based upon the worship of serpent kings. The serpents were ruling over humanity. And then they had children with human beings that were hybrid children. Half human, half serpent, right? This is more than myth. And this is what all the ancient cultures say, right? So far, so good, right? Now, the serpents were called Naga in prehistory. So, and they would normally come down on the mountains. So people would have to go up to the mountains to encounter those serpent kings, right? So the mountains were called Meru. Never forget that. The mountain upon which the serpent would come down was called Meru. Now, when you look at the word Meru, there are very many mountains around the world, and I've covered this in another video, around the world that are called Meru. For example, in Tanzania, we have a mountain called Meru, right? For Mount Kenya, it's the same name, but it has a twist. We'll get back to that later. Now, you go to all the way to India, you'll find that the holy mountains are called Meru. Either they will use the word Mahameru, Pameru, Semeru. It makes no difference. It is the word Meru. You go all the way to Solomon Islands. They do have a mountain called Meru. So this name keeps on occurring over and over and over again. And on top of the mountain called Meru is where the Naga would come down to meet with people and give them knowledge, right? And the people would worship the Naga. Naga is the word for snake. Now, when you're watching some of these American movies, like when you see it starting, when the movie, just before the movie starts, they always show the company that made the movie. And sometimes you'll see the image of a lion, a roaring lion, right? And there's another company that shows you something different. It shows you a mountain, and then it shows you stars flying towards that mountain. And the stars go and they arrange themselves at the peak of that mountain. Now, you may not know what that means. It could be, you may think that is just art. That is not art. These are the hidden things, the hidden knowledge that they plant in these movies. Now, what they're showing you when you look at that imagery of a mountain peak with the stars around it, they're showing you the way the Naga would come down to the mountain peaks and people would go up to the mountain to get knowledge and to worship the Naga. Now, coming back to Kenya, when you look at Mount Kenya, Mount Kenya they named it after the Kamba pronunciation for Kirinyaga, right? So the name is Kirinyaga. That may mean nothing to you. But don't forget that the word Nyaga is the word Naga. And Kiri means it has Naga. It's the same thing that the Indians say. It is the exact same thing that the Buddhists say, because in Buddhism, the 5 celestial peaks of Buddhism are called Meru, right? And a pyramid, the pyramids that you see that were built in history, the Egyptians would call the word pyramid. Their word for pyramid was Meru. And Egypt was the land of pyramids, so it was called Ta-Meri. You see how that plays out. So let's come back to Koitalel. Now, Koitalel is saying the same thing. It is the same knowledge, isn't it? Because he's saying when you see the serpent people showing up in your land, you have to fight them. Now the question is this: how did he know that they were the serpent people? Which is exactly what Moses is saying, that in later times there will be the descendants of the serpent, right? And he continues to give another prophecy about the relationship between the children of the woman and the children of the serpent. He says that they shall injure you, isn't it? They shall bruise your heel, but at the end you will crush their head. That's exactly what Koitalel is saying. He's saying this, he's identifying who the serpent people are. He's saying when you see the serpent snaking its way in your land, you have to fight. Because whatever will come from that snake will not be good. He's identifying for you who are the descendants of the serpent. And if you continue with the biblical narrative, it continues to say that there shall be perpetual enmity between those who are descended from the woman and those who are descended from the serpent. Serpent seed versus human seed. So, from all the knowledge that we have today, who are descended from the woman? Of course, it's you. It's Africans. Africans, they are the original inhabitants of this planet. And sure enough, Africans are hated by everyone else all over the earth. Anyone who does not have the full DNA of Africans hates Africans. Isn't it? And they insist that they are better than us. Right? Serpent seed. A perpetual hatred that will never end. And let me tell you this. after the hostilities, after the war between Koitalel and the British pretended to sue for peace. So they said, let us have a meeting and let us have a discussion about this war. Let us end the war. So Koitalel goes for the meeting to negotiate. And as he stretches out his hand to greet the British commander, that British commander pulls out his gun and murders him in cold blood. How do you do that to someone? Someone trying to greet you and you murder them. That is the nasty way, the backstabbing, wicked way the British murdered him. Now, let's fast forward to today. Today, all the people in Kalenjin land know how Koitalel was murdered by the British. They know that. But when they name their children in honor of the British. If you go right now to Rift Valley, every single person you'll meet has a British name. Isn't that an insult to the prophet? That the murderers of the prophet are the ones you're naming your son after. How do you explain that? Right? You'd think if you honor your prophet, all your sons should have his name. I mean, you see the Muslims naming their sons after Muhammad, right? How come you don't name your sons after Koitalel? If you really honor him. So you see, he's not even honored in his own land. And when you're in Kericho and you look to the left, let's say you're driving from Kisumu to Nairobi and you reach Kericho, you will see beautiful rolling hills. Amazing, very beautiful. Full of tea. Let me tell you, all that land is still owned by the British. So, how do you allow your prophet who's telling you to resist the serpent seed, how do you allow the serpent seed to own all the best land? That when you're driving through Kericho, you pretend not to see. You have to look up at the sky in order not to see that all that land is owned by the British. The murderers of Koitalel have the best land. He must be turning in his grave. Probably not, because they can't even find his bones. Why? Because the British stole his bones. And no one is pursuing them to recover his bones to give him a proper burial. How do you allow such an important prophet to go without a mausoleum? He deserves a huge mausoleum, isn't it? And a massive statue. But like we said, in slave society, in hierarchical societies, whereby you have slaves and then you have masters, in the case of Kenya, it's the Mzungu who's on top, right? He's the godhead. And then we are at the bottom, right? So in such stratified societies, the slaves never show any kind of solidarity or loyalty to other slaves. Solidarity, empathy, sympathy, love, affection goes to the master, which is why Jubilee is able to send flowers to the British because they are dying of a disease, but would never send flowers to the graveside of Koitalel. You see how that works out. And so because you as Kenyans refuse to honor him, I will honor him. To me, he's the only real prophet in the history of Kenya. The TV prophets don't make it for me. Because they will never tell you to resist the beast. They will always tell you to worship the beast and his image, right? But Koitalel tells you, resist the beast, fight the beast, fight to the finish. Don't bow down to the serpent seed. And so for me, Koitalel remains the most important prophet in the history of Kenya. And I absolutely honor him. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Kenya's time has come. Our time has come. Your time has come. A time to succeed and not fail. A time to grow wealth and not poverty. A time to go up and not down. It's time for you to stop walking and drive your car. Stop renting and buy yourself a house. It's your time to get blessed. Join the CCV movement and together let us keep poverty and unemployment out of Kenya. Become a member today. Donate what you can. And remember that the CCV is the only political organization in Kenya that is squarely built upon Christian values, unlike the rest. We'll see you next time. Thank you.